Okay, I'm Matt, and joined today for more chatting expletive about Sorcerous Cup by Twiggy, Danny, and Smitey. Guys, how you doing?
Not too bad,
Good.
thanks.
Really well, thanks.
Good. So, by the time this video goes out, none of these guys will have been featured quite yet on the channel, but I've got a video coming out soon with Danny. I've got plans with Smitey to go through his Forest Cup, and I'm hoping to get some footage from Twiggy sometime soon, as he's a very new player. Only started in, was it Forest you started, Twiggy, or was it Voyager?
Yeah, start Forest.
Started Forest, so yeah, it'd be interesting to see some of Twiggy's play from the perspective of a very new player. And Twiggy's going to start us off, and Twiggy's going to talk about Licky Tongue.
Cool. So for me, this cup is quite difficult because I only had an Azumarill and a Toxicroak actually built PvP-wise. I'd played around with a single move Hypno in GBL, so a lot of this cup I've never touched any of the meta. And I just built it on PV Poke. I saw a lot of the normal types like the Munchlax, the Linoons, and the Licky Tongues, and they were one of the first things that it drew my eye to because of how well they did just generally across the meta. And I was obviously first drawn to Licky Tongue because of how well it performs in the Azu matchup, and I thought Azu was quite high up on the board. A lot of people were just going to bring Azu quite generally. So the one thing it does bring there is 100% can win you the Azu matchup really well, but Power Whip hits it quite hard. One of the downsides I was finding with it is it does lose to most of the other normal types. So Munchlax will outpace it. It will lose to Linoon just because Linoon's got quite a harder hitting moves. But what I did quite like is that you can get them low enough for your next Pokemon to come in and farm it down quite well before it can hit you with a Body Slam. So I think it gets Munchlax down to about 18 to 20 HP depending on its IVs. So you can come in with your Azu or your Hypno and just farm up a lot of energy from it. I do quite like the Body Slam spam. I think that can really chip away at a lot of things. And even if you're stuck in a Toxicroak, you can, if they're going to want to farm you, you can get off a fair few Body Slams before it takes you out. And I think the thing I liked about it over Munchlax was that it can get to Power Whip quicker than Munchlax can get to a Bulldoze. So I think there's not many situations I saw where you were going to have enough energy on your Munchlax to really hit something that hard with a Bulldoze. So I think more likely if you can build up a lot of energy on your Licky Tongue and anything comes in, just spamming that Body Slam over anything else, I think really does give it a lot of benefits.
Cool.
I can't really think of much else because it is quite a general Pokemon.
Sure. Yeah, that's plenty for us to discuss. Danny or Smitey, have you got any thoughts on Licky Tongue to begin with?
Well, funny enough, talking of Licky Tongue, I toyed around a little bit with Licky as well and compared both of them together. I just wanted to see if there was any kind of strategy that we could look to build where you could almost run Munchlax with Licky Tongue or Licky. And I think that probably sounds ridiculous, but that's the type of thing that I was going in for. But Licky Tongue was the one thing I was really considering, but I felt that the downfall for it was you needed either a lucky one with a high percentage IV or you need that hundo. So it's a big investment where Munchlax was maybe a little bit more accessible for people. But yeah, I definitely agree that I would rather have something that had an optional grass move and the Body Slam spam. So I can see definitely where you're coming from, where you'd want a Licky Tongue maybe over a Munchlax and a Linoon. It kind of combines both of them together, but I think it's really helpful.
Yeah, agreed. Interesting what you were saying about Munchlax being a bit more of a budget-friendly option. I'm surprised, Twiggy, that given how new you are to PvP, that you've not got a Munchlax yet. You have got a Licky Tongue. Was it a hundo that you already had been maxed out, or?
It was a 98 that I was quite happy with because it was one of the first raid things that I believe I did. and it was one of those things that I like the look of it, and it's my one sort of big investment for this that I'm going to sort of go with.
Right.
Just because of how general it is, and because Licky performs quite well in Ultra League. If I don't like it, just evolve it up and then best buddy it anyway. It's gonna treat me well.
Yeah, smart. Good thinking. Danny, any thoughts?
Something I like about Licky Tongue over the others is I'm just looking at the Sims now because I thought it was the case. With a single lick lead, you win in against Frostlass, which I think is quite a big thing. Just going straight power whip, you don't even have to bait. Whereas I think Munchlax needs to bait to land the bulldoze or get maybe a 3 lick lead. I think it is. And Licky Tongue, if it's got Earthquake or Shadow Ball, I think it takes a lot longer to get to the power whip, so it has to bait as well. Sorry, it takes a lot longer to get to the other charge move than the body slam, so it needs to bait as well. Whereas the Licky Tongue itself, it just needs 1 lick lead.
Oh, that's a pretty distinguishing feature then. I mean, that's from the other lickers in particular. With Lenu and with the Shadow Claw, I would have thought that's probably the best normal type versus the Frostlass. But yeah, if it doesn't have to bait the body slam, because it's a big risky bait, that going for a body slam against the ghost, isn't it? So that's a good thing to avoid if it's all possible.
I think it's something you talked about before, especially in your Rose Cup one, where having those risky baits can really, really backfire on you. Like trying to Poison Fang and Earth type, with a Golbat, for example, is the worst feeling in the world. So if you can just go, and if you hit the power whip, you've won.
Yeah.
And if they think it's a body slam, you've just power whipped anyway. And if they shield it, you still just go for another power whip and win. And you come out with around 36 HP as well, which isn't, it isn't anything to like to feel bad about, because that's still quite a lot. You can get to another body slam in that time against your next opponent.
Yeah, I think something that you said about it, Twiggy, that I picked up on was you said that there was something it loses to just that leaves it within farming range. Was that Toxicroak? Was that, or was it Munchlax?
Munchlax, yeah.
Yeah, and I think leaving things in farming range might be a bit of a theme in this cup, because certainly with the Charmers, there's not much that beats the Charmers here in 2 shields. You've got your Bronzong and your Alolan Sandslash as your steel types, and then there's your sort of pure poisons, or well, certainly the non-dark poisons. And I think from the Sims I've looked at, I've kind of looked around, playing around Wigglytuff a bit, and just almost accepting that I'm going to lose the 2 shield scenarios, and I'm going to leave it with a lot of the things I'm going to use against it. I'm just going to leave it within farming range with something else, and try and win off the energy advantage that I'm going to gain from that, if I so happen to play against the Wigglytuff team. So I think that might be a bit of a recurring theme, and you could almost sort of build that into a strategy. Also, with that particular matchup against the Munchlax, if you're both doing lick damages, lick versus each other, and they're both quite HP heavy ones as well, so I can't imagine the body slams are doing much to each other. So that's going to be a very long matchup, and if you can just stay disciplined, your opponent might get bored and switch out before you as well. Because that's going to be a niche sim that a lot of people won't know. You as the Licky Tongue user might know it, because if you're using Licky Tongue, which is a bit more specialist than Munchlax because of the power whip, that might be a sim that you've run and sort of looked at clearly as you have. But if you're the Munchlax user, you probably don't know for sure who comes out of that match winning, so you might be more tempted to switch. So I think even in that losing matchup, as you say, there's possibilities to gain an advantage from that, which is important when you lose a matchup for sure. So yeah, I think we've covered everything about Licky Tongue, really, haven't we? Are there any other notable moves other than Body Slam and Power Whip, or is it Body Slam, Power Whip all the way?
Just say Body Slam, Power Whip all the way for me.
Okay, cool. Danny, do you want to tell us about your pick?
I picked Venusaur. Admittedly, I haven't spent as much time as most people have looking at Sorcerous Cup, but when I first looked at Sorcerous, I immediately saw Azumarill, and now a lot of people would have looked at Azumarill in Forest as well and said there's a lot of counters to Azumarill's not going to be good, and it turned out to be completely false. Even when there's counters to Azumarill's still fits in most teams. It's bulky enough to eat charge moves. It can throw things, throw super effective moves back, or even in neutral matchups, it's super strong. So my thinking with this cup is, I think Azumarill's going to be super good again. And okay, there's a lot of poison going around, but you don't ever want to be in a situation where you don't have something that can counter Azumarill on your team. So if you have the dark poisons are obviously the natural choice because they're really good in this cup, but Venusaur's there as well, and Venusaur has its positive matchups against other things as well, like the normal types. Venusaur can win the normal lickers with just straight frenzy point, and I think that's a really good bonus as well, because I think that we're going to see a lot of those flying about. Also, you'd be talking about the fairies, and nothing really beats them in the 2 shields. Venusaur does straight frenzy point. It beats Wigglytuff. It beats Gramble. It beats is Clefable. Yeah, it beats Clefable as well. Straight frenzy point. So I think it's got its merits. You take 2 shields off them if they want to take them, and you only have to shield one back.
Yeah. I think it's a really interesting pick. I think certainly in season 1, I think Venusaur must have been the Pokemon I used more than anything else. It seemed to me that I was picking Venusaur whenever it was available. It's just really quick and really aggressive, and as you sort of alluded to, the frenzy plants do a lot of neutral damage against things that are neutral to it, like the normal types. And the speed of it as well, it allows it to pick up some matches that you might not expect. So I know, again, Frostlass is one of my favourite things to use as well. So I've seen the sims for Frostlass versus Venusaur quite a few times over the existence of Sylph, and Frostlass doesn't beat Venusaur easily at all. It can't switch in on Venusaur just because of that speed and the big power that it's throwing out. So certainly, if your opponent doesn't prepare for it, it can certainly be a massive threat. Any thoughts on Venusaur, guys?
I was looking at it today, actually, kind of just considering the thought process of the kind of same thing you were talking about of Azumarill. How big of an issue is Azumarill going to be? So I kind of scrolled through the grass options as well, and initially I was looking at a Purified Gloom. I thought maybe Return might be good, but ultimately it kind of fell down to, would it be Victory Bell or would it be Venusaur for me? So I agree that I think it's probably something that's going to be more mandatory than we're expecting at the start. But I think it'll probably take a couple of weeks almost for people to realise how good grass is going to be.
Sure.
That's what I found out, at least, and I think that's why we've been keeping it quiet. The Razor Leafers are good. The Razor Leafers are really good.
Right. So you prefer a Razor Leaf grass type? Do you think then?
I reckon so. I tried some actual games with Victory Bell, and I don't have a 2-move Victory Bell at the moment for some reason. But I was able to straight Frenzy Plant, a Tentacruel down, and a Wigglytuff, just Razor Leafs, and it just felt too good to be true. So I think in certain situations, if you could line it up well, then I think Razor Leaf is going to be as deadly as it is normally. But I still think that having the option of Venusaur over something like Victory Bell would probably be a safer option. I think that's the best way to put it.
Yeah. Interesting that you mentioned Return on Gloom, because I know before we started recording this, I was having a quick conversation with Danny about perhaps running Return Ivysaur.
Okay.
Now, I don't think it's quite quick enough to get that big hit off, the big neutral hit off on the dark poisons fast enough. However, you've just mentioned Gloom, and that's given me another idea.
Moonblast.
Well, I was going to say Weeping Bell now gets Bullet Seed, doesn't it?
That's very true.
And I believe Shadow Weeping Bell or Shadow Bellsprout is a thing.
I think Shadow is not allowed in this cup, though.
No, you could purify. Yeah, you could purify a Weeping Bell to get Return Weeping Bell and see if that hit a bit harder on the dark poisons, because Bullet Seed's a bit faster than Vine Whip, isn't it?
It's looking at it now, it's got some good wins.
Oh, okay.
It just destroys the Azumarill as you expect. It comfortably beats Frostlass.
Yeah. Of course, what you are missing out on there is, as Danny was saying, the big neutral frenzy plant hit.
Exactly.
So yeah, there's all factors to be weighed up when considering a grass type. Twiggy, any thoughts on Venusaur or the grass types in general?
I struggle to see how you would use it in your team of 3, because you'd have to really line it up correctly. So would you just be hoping to line up? Because I'd say it's quite a risky sort of switch in, or it probably would be a surprise lead.
Yeah, I wouldn't ever switch it in. I think Noctowl and he's going to be too prevalent in the cup to ever switch it in, really, and it just leaves it so hard to Noctowl. But I think it's going to be better on the lead, and then with a really safe swap to back it up. If you can figure out what your safe swap will be in your team, I think risky lead safe swap is going to be the option for that, because if you can catch someone's Azumarill off guard in the lead, you can follow it around the rest of the game, and that feels like something I'd really, really want to try and do.
Especially with Azumarill being one of the most versatile picks in this cup as well. Yeah, I think that sort of hard grass counter to it would be good.
I think a lot of people are going to try use the normal lickers as a safe swap as well. They seem to have quite a good matchup against quite a lot of things. Even into the fighters, they don't do too bad. So I think if that's their safe swap, you can actually block that safe swap because you win. Sure. And I don't know if people know that they win. Venusaur wins that, so I think that's something that I find quite interesting as well.
Yeah, I think it could be an interesting pick for sure. Okay, so Smitey's up next, and he's going to tell us about a pick that I was initially very excited about, but I've since gone off the boil, so perhaps Smitey can win me back.
Okay, well, look, first of all, he might be ranked 62 on PvP Poke, but Big Bad Kangaskhan is the best Pokemon in Sorcerous Cup, without a doubt. All of you think that big old Kangaskhan shouldn't even be looked at because he's so far down the list. He's not going to be meta relevant. He's not going to do anything. In the One Shield, now let me just get started. In the One Shield, Kangaskhan beats Alolan Muck, Bronzong, Frostlass, Tentacruel, Munchlax, Licky, and Skuntank. And this is Kangaskhan running Mudslap, Power Up Punch, and Crunch. Like, it's got some alternative moves, don't get me wrong, but I feel that Mudslap is obviously similar to kind of a Confusion user, but it's raw damage, it hurts. You know, in 2 shields, it beats things like Alolan Sandslash as well. It has that similar role to the other normal types like Munchlax, etc., but it's still got the coverage to be able to take out some of the more difficult things, I would say. You know, I feel that Frostlass versus Munchlax can be a bit iffy at times if the Frostlass has got a bit of an energy advantage, but with Kangaskhan, I feel Kangaskhan can kind of push it over. And a lot of people don't realise that. And also to straight farm down on a lot of the poison types. Whilst trying to play it, I've realised that anytime a poison comes in and people don't know what Kangaskhan does, you can really take advantage of it. Literally, as soon as you kind of get one power-up punch off and the Mudslaps really start to hit, it gets scary. It's almost like a Mawile playstyle. That's what it reminds me of. That's what I kind of treat it as. Yeah, I feel like what Mawile did in Sinister, and it didn't really pop up until kind of maybe the first kind of couple of weeks of Sinister. Once people started playing Mawile, they're like, okay, Mawile just counters all the ghosts. I feel that Kangaskhan does this same process, but with all the poison types. And obviously, with Azumarill going to be popular, with poison in general being popular, with dark poison as well, I feel Mudslap is just OP. That's my opinion. You know, I don't expect everyone to go out and spend all the dust on a Kangaskhan, but I'm definitely going to use mine, and I definitely like the benefit of having Crunch. I know that obviously it loses to lots of things, but that's why you just have to build a team to protect it. You've got to protect the Kangaskhan.
Sure. And as you quite rightly said, it beats a lot of things as well. You know, so...
It's not just a loser.
No, I think there's merit there. I think there's a better option, and I'll come on to that in a bit. But what do you guys think about Kangaskhan?
I do think there's a better option as well, and I think it's the same one that you might be thinking. But I do understand there's merits to Kangaskhan. I mean, I'm going to go back to my pick of Venusaur, and Kangaskhan has a better matchup than the one I'm thinking of against Venusaur.
Okay.
I'm thinking of other Mudslappers.
Oh, I'm not thinking of Mudslappers.
Oh, you're not thinking of other Mudslappers. Okay, so I'm thinking of Claydol's the other alternative Mudslapper. But Claydol obviously is the dark type weakness, so it's not as good against like a lot of muck and it's contact with an energy lead or something like that. So that's where you pick that up. And obviously it's got the Venusaur, really bad Venusaur weakness as Claydol with the ground type. Whereas Kangaskhan doesn't have that, but it still loses. It still loses to Venusaur. So I'm going to put that out there. It's a poison type that will beat the Mudslapper.
He's a big neutral boy. Big neutral boy. That's what we like.
Yeah, but I think it's really good. I think the threat of Alolan and I think the threat of Skuntank in this cup are real. And I think he's a really solid option against them.
Yeah. Twiggy, any thoughts?
I just, all of these picks, I'm just thinking, how many normal types am I going to end up with on my team? Every time I think I went into the first practice, I think I ran a line of Lickitung, Noctowl, and Wigglytuff. I was like, I'm running a triple normal team. It didn't sit right with me.
Normal is best.
Fair enough.
What I will say is, for me, I look at what I think are going to be the stronger picks of the cup, and I think Noctowl is going to be huge, and I think Azumarill is going to be huge, and he just doesn't dent either of them. So I think that's the struggle I would have justifying putting him in the team.
Yeah.
Is if they can run both of those on one line, then you're hoping to pick something else off from their line, and then just completely lose the Kangaskhan to a farm down with the rest of them. So
yeah, and that's exactly what I found when I ran it in a practice as well. I mean, perhaps not the best play on my part to consistently get it stuck against Noctowl or Azumarill, but it could happen. You know, it's quite easy to imagine opponents consistently running a team of three that include both Azumarill and Noctowl. So I guess in a similar sense to Venusaur, actually, where you're very much targeting down one thing. As Smitey was saying, you've got to build around it and protect it, and make sure you get that matchup. And yeah, I'm sure it can be deadly. It can be deadly, 100%.
It'll be good bench pressure. That's all that matters. Good bench pressure.
To say. I mean, it can completely discourage them ever bringing Bronzong, for example.
Yeah. Well, has anyone else got any other thoughts on Kangaskhan? Because if not, you mentioned Bronzong, and that's a good point to transition into my pick, actually.
Okay.
So my pick is Alolan Raticate. And this is something that I saw as the sort of natural successor to Kangaskhan in my practices, because it's got that normal type, which is nice against the other normals that do ghost damage. It's also dark type, which means it's resisting the dark pulses and the snarls and the crunches from the dark poisons. So they're then relying to, it makes baiting from the dark poisons a lot riskier, which I think is always a nice way to force your opponent to play. Doesn't quite do the raw damage output against the dark poisons that Kangaskhan does, but because it's got the resistance and it makes your opponent play a bit slower against it, it still muscles through them a little bit more. With Bronzong being a confusion user and Raticate being dark type, you're still beating the Raticate. You're still beating the Bronzong, sorry. You've got the added bonus of picking up Hypno. Yes, you're massively weak to counter, but Kangaskhan's losing to counter users anyway. With the exception of Toxicroak, I'll give Kangaskhan its dues there for sure. And it's also weak to the charm users as well. But again, Kangaskhan's struggling there anyway. And I think the nice thing about Raticate as well is, while it's a fairly plain Pokemon with not a great deal of coverage, the three moves it gets, Crunch, Hyper Fang, and Hyper Beam, I think there's a genuine case for running all three of them. Obviously you can't, but I think Crunch is great, against the Frostlass and against the Hypno and against the Bronzong. Hyper Fang, you need Hyper Fang if you want him to beat the dark poisons without baiting. And Hyper Beam is wonderful, because if you switch in Alolan Raticate, as I say, as a sort of safe switch against a team that doesn't have a Charmer or a fighting type, and your opponent switches in Azumarill as a counter switch, they're not shielding against you, and you're going to land that Hyper Beam. And with Quick Attack, you're gonna beat Azumarill. So depending on what role you need it to fill in your team, you can run different moves. I think Hyper Beam is risky, of course, and I would definitely recommend Hyper Fang Crunch to begin with as a starting point for anyone wanting to use Alolan Raticate. But the Hyper Beam option's there, and no one likes getting Hyper Beamed. So you could always feint the Hyper Beam. You can always massively overcharge if you're running Hyper Fang and Crunch just to try and scare your opponent into shielding, thinking it's a Hyper Beam. And I think ultimately that's the big difference between Raticate and Kangaskhan, in my opinion, is that it's got the big fear factor of the big charge move that gives it an out against most things. So yeah, that's my thought on Alolan Raticate. I'll come to Smitey first to see what he has to say in regards to that.
Why not run both? My current line of 6 has both of them in.
Wow.
I think that's the scary part. I put both of them in because I like Rat as well. I even stupidly looked at Bite Rat as well, just to think maybe the possibility. But I didn't like Bite Rat as much as I like Quick Attack Rat. All I kind of thought about while also looking at Rat was in Ferocious. Before I decided to be a normal person and run Umbreon, I tried to run Rat for the first couple of tournaments because I don't need Umbreon, I'll run Rat. And the pure bulkiness of it is similar to things like Munchlax, etc. And I feel that that's going to be more beneficial in this cup, where I would probably say the main damage dealers are a bit more glassy. You want stuff that can kind of survive. You need almost 2 safe switches rather than 1.
Sure.
And I can understand maybe running a line of Munchlax and Raticate together, where you've got 2 bulkier boys on 1 softer glass cannon type style Pokemon, like Frostlass.
Yeah.
That type of thing is probably going to be more beneficial than Kangaskhan. I like Kangaskhan for its own merits, but I can understand obviously why you'd rather want to go for Raticate that can probably dish out a bit more than Kanga, bless it. But we'll see.
Yeah. And I think as well, going back to what Vita Nastity's mentioned on the last episode of this, was that of course Galarian, Linoon and Obstagoon are both going to be out soon with the same typing as Alolan Raticate. So if you've not invested in a Raticate just yet, don't go away and spend 200,000 Stardust, because Alolan, Linoon and Obstagoon could well be better.
Something I'm seeing that I didn't really pay attention to with Alolan Raticate is, if you look at all the switches in the cup, according to PvPoke, it beats a lot of the best switches in the cup. So if you can win lead with Alolan Raticate in the back, you just switch into it and win the secondary switch.
Yeah,
it seems to beat a lot of them.
Yeah, it's a really good counter switch, but it's one of those things where, and I think there's a few things like this as well. It can quite easily be scared away by just 2 things on your opponent's team. Like, for example, if your opponent's got a Charmer and a Fighting type, you'd be mad to bring, in my opinion, you'd be mad to bring Alolan Raticate in that team. And I think the same sort of thing with Noctowl, if they've got a Steel type and an Ice type. The Steel type's primary function is to take out the Noctowl and the Charmers. I think it's one of a few things in this cup where there's going to be a case of choosing what you weak to, and I think Raticate, because it's a bit of an unassuming looking Pokemon, it might just creep under the radar.
I think you will be surprised how many times people will bring things in, even when they're weak to 3, 4, 5 things on someone's team. I found that in Forest, I would bring Ferrothorn, I would bring Webberden Trash, and I would have Azumarill on my team, which all really easily beat Kingdra, but people would still always bring Kingdra against me. It felt like it didn't really matter that they were weak, that they had loads of counters. People just, if they like the Pokemon, they'll bring it. And sometimes I think if you've got that lineup as well, where you've got 2 things that are strong against Raticate, then you won't necessarily always bring both of them that are strong.
True. Yeah, very good point. Very good point.
So if you can keep him away from the things that he's weak against, I think he's actually a pretty good pick. I'd not considered it.
Yeah, it's a big, it's a big neutral hitter, and I think to put it in context, Azumarill's play rough does about 50%, or maybe a bit less. Like, it's not a massive wipeout hit, so you can, there's the tanking power there that you sometimes need to rely on. Yeah, Twiggy.
It's pretty rapid on moves as well.
Yes, yeah, quick attack's pretty good charging fast attack for sure.
I had a look at it when I first had a look at this meta, and I thought it did go quite well with Wigglytuff in a line. I think you can definitely, if you start with Wigglytuff, you're going to get something low enough for, again, I do quite like the farm in this. Or if you come in with Raticate, even if they come in with a fighter, you've got Wigglytuff in the back then just to shred it when it comes out and you've drawn out the fighter. Again, what put me off was just how expensive it is. I know I went for Lickitung, but I don't think I could quite.
Yeah,
I wasn't going to quite go Lickitung and Raticate.
Yeah, especially to both is a bit of a push, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely an interesting pick.
Yeah. Any final thoughts on anything we've discussed here, or are we good to call that a day?
If you're running Azumarill, don't run the playset that it says on PV Poke. I think you need Ice Beam.
I agree. I think you need Ice Beam.
Yeah.
But I think Azumarill's one of those versatile picks where, what I might want it to be on my team might be different from what you want it to be on your team. And I know it struggles with Hypno without Hydro Pump, doesn't it? So, and it certainly struggles with Bronzong without Hydro Pump, and it struggles with the Mirror without Play Rough. So I think there's versatility there with the Azumarill moveset, but Ice Beam, I think, is the way.
What I quite like about all the Pokemon we spoke about today is none of them are particularly bait dependent, which I think this cup it's a struggle for me, because I struggle with baits a lot of the time, and especially with a lot of the meta is all the PvP matchups are Tentacle, for example. It throws Acid Spray 100% shield straight away, which really puts Tentacle higher than it should be. Same as Mantine last cup. But I think what's quite nice about these four is that you just go straight moves. You don't have to rely on base at all. And I think that's a really good thing to bring in your line of 6. Something that you just go straight for.
Yeah, for sure.
And that's something I really struggled in Rose Cup with. I'm really not that good at baiting or reading baits. So I like to put things on my team where I know the matchup is just steady, just go with what you've got to go with. And I think that's why I like Venusaur. A lot of the matchups, it's just Frenzy Punch, just a very good move.
Yeah.
And I think that's why I like Lickitung over the others, because Power Whip starts to beat things that Body Slam itself can't beat, but you don't have to get to Bulldoze, you don't have to get to Earthquake, you don't have to get to Shadow Ball, you're just a very neutral, low energy move.
No, fair enough. Yeah, I think we've had certainly some interesting picks today. I mean, the meta's been out, about 10 days, and I've not heard a peep out of anyone about grass types in particular. It's nice it's been nice to have seen someone defending Kangaskhan so well as well, because I think for a while some of the people I speak to and team build with and sort of talk to a lot, I think I was getting quite a bit of stick about Kangaskhan, so it's been nice to see that it's not just me who strongly considered it. And Lickitung certainly gave us more insight into how it has those unique properties of not having to bait. So yeah, I think certainly some useful stuff's come out of this. Hopefully you guys will agree, and hopefully we'll get some use out of these picks on our teams. I think, if Smitey, if you were saying you're almost certain to run Kangaskhan and Twiggy, I know you like Wigglytuff, not Wigglytuff, Lickitung. Big pink things, they're all the same, aren't they? I know I like Alolan Raticate. Whether I'll use it or not, I don't know. But so I think it's good that we've all had picks that we're really strongly considering. That's good. Well, thanks for joining, guys. It's been great, and I'm sure we'll get some footage up from your games soon. Show off some of the skills. I think we've got some Forest Cup coming from you, Smitey, haven't we? With some elite.
We love Forest Cup. We love Forest Cup.
I love Forest Cup. It's so fast. It's great.
That's I'm a little bit upset. I screwed up London yesterday. I gave Lloydie Elite. That's what I'm claiming.
Oh, okay. Well, how kind of
I screwed up a 6-1 and gave Lloydie Elite. That's what I'm going to claim.
Oh well, I'm sure Lodi appreciates it.
Oh yeah, sharing is caring. I got one last thought for you, all of you guys, just to mull over and really think about. I don't know if you've even looked at it yet, but Hex on Frostlass.
Yes, but no.
Hex on Frostlass is the way.
Right, let's leave it there then. Cheers, guys. Thanks for coming on.
Cheers.
Cheers, thank you.
Bye.